Lewis Hamilton drops bombshell verdict after explosive clash with Ferrari race engineer. Stay until the end only if you want to see every detail of this brutal and unexpected confrontation. What took place during the most recent Grand Prix has shaken the very foundation of the Formula One world. It wasn't merely another misstep or an overheated exchange broadcast over the radio. It was a culmination of weeks, perhaps even months, of restrained tension, bottled-up resentment, and conflicting philosophies that finally erupted in a moment so raw, so brutally honest, that it left not only the Ferrari pit wall speechless but sent ripple effects throughout the entire paddock. Lewis Hamilton, the seven-time world champion, the statesman of the grid, the man so often lauded for his poise and precision both on and off the track, has finally peeled back the layers of diplomacy that have so long defined his public persona. This wasn't a slip of the tongue or a lapse in composure. It was a deliberate unveiling of dissatisfaction and disillusionment with the inner workings of Ferrari's race day operation. Since the day the news broke that Hamilton would don the red overalls of the prancing horse, the buzz in the Formula One community was electric. The marriage of two titanic forces, Hamilton, the most successful driver of the modern era, and Ferrari, the most storied team in motorsport history, seemed, at least on paper, to be a match destined for glory. Supporters envisioned podiums drenched in red, iconic victories on hallowed circuits, and perhaps even a record-breaking 8th World Championship. The media lapped it up with giddy optimism. Social media campaigns surged. Merchandising exploded. But underneath all the glamour and the polished PR campaigns, a quieter, more ominous story has been unfolding, one marked by strategic disagreements, unspoken misalignments, and growing uncertainty about whether this partnership was ever truly built on solid ground. Even in the early races of the season, the signs were there for those willing to look beyond the surface. Hamilton, while still capable of moments of jaw-dropping brilliance, never quite seemed at ease behind the wheel of the SF25. His comments during post-race interviews were polite but occasionally carried a subtle edge, a lingering pause here, a forced smile there. There was a stiffness in his interactions with the team over the radio, a mechanical tone that hinted at something less than full trust. While the results on paper, multiple top 5 finishes, a couple of near podiums, and relatively consistent qualifying efforts, painted a picture of a steady transition, the nuances of his demeanor suggested otherwise. Everything came to a head during the race weekend that was supposed to reaffirm Ferrari's resurgence. With the Scuderia aiming to make up critical points in the Constructors' Championship, and Hamilton locked in a tight midfield battle that could swing either way depending on strategy, the pressure cooker was already near boiling point. The tension was palpable even before lights out. Ferrari engineers had been running simulations late into the night. Hamilton had reportedly requested additional setup changes during Friday's free practice that the team was reluctant to implement. The paddock buzzed with rumors of internal disagreement, but nothing could prepare anyone for what would be heard over the team radio just 20 laps from the checkered flag. It started innocuously enough, a call to pit. Standard procedure. A strategic decision that's made hundreds of times throughout a season. Hamilton was running P6, tires aging but still within performance range. Ferrari's head strategist relayed the decision through his race engineer, instructing him to bring Lewis in for a fresh set of mediums that could, in theory, give him an edge to climb up to P4 by the end of the race. The command was clear: box now, box now. This is optimal. But what followed was anything but routine. Hamilton's reply was immediate, but it wasn't loud or emotional. It was calm, calculated, but unmistakably cold. "I'm not convinced." That's all he said at first, but the silence that followed on the team radio felt deafening. Then, with even more emphasis, he added, "The tires feel fine. Are you sure?" In that moment, something changed. You could almost hear the breath hitching on the pit wall. The engineer's response was delayed, halting. "Yes, Lewis, we believe this is the best window." But the veteran driver wasn't buying it. What came next wasn't just a disagreement, it was a philosophical clash. Hamilton pressed further, challenging not just the call but the reasoning behind it. "Based on what data? Why now? I'm managing pace. I can go longer." The conversation devolved into a tense back and forth that left commentators stunned. Never before had Hamilton so publicly and so forcefully questioned the strategic competency of his team. And it wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Every word was laced with the implication that he no longer trusted the judgment coming from the pit wall. It was a damning indictment of Ferrari's race strategy department, spoken in real time, with millions listening. After several more tense exchanges, Hamilton relented, pitting on the next lap, but the damage had already been done. He rejoined the track in P9, behind slower traffic, and struggled to make up ground. The overcut he had argued for might have kept him in clean air and potentially gained him track position, but now, boxed in and visibly frustrated, he fell into a rhythm that was anything but aggressive. His lap times dipped. His body language in the car, usually smooth and calculated, became erratic. Even the team radio fell silent, an eerie calm after the storm. Post-race, Hamilton's body language spoke volumes. He avoided eye contact with the engineers on the pit wall. He gave only a brief nod to his mechanic before walking into the garage. During the media pen interviews, his answers were clipped and devoid of the usual polish. "I gave my opinion," he said when asked about the strategy call. "They chose differently." When pressed further on whether he still had faith in the decision-making process at Ferrari, he paused for several seconds before offering a vague, "We'll need to review the data." But behind closed doors, sources indicate the conversation was anything but vague. Hamilton is said to have confronted team principal Fred Vasseur directly, raising concerns not only about this race but about a pattern of decision-making that he views as reactive, inconsistent, and not reflective of a championship-caliber operation. It wasn't a shouting match, but it was heated. And it represented, more than anything, a breakdown of the mutual confidence that is so essential in the pressure cooker world of elite motorsport. For now, the official line from Ferrari is that everything is fine. The team issued a boilerplate statement praising Hamilton's effort and emphasizing continuous improvement. But those words ring hollow in light of what the world witnessed. This wasn't just a blip. It was a moment of unmasking. Hamilton, ever the professional, has kept his frustrations in check longer than most would have. But even he has his limits. And this race, this pit call, this botched opportunity, it was the moment those limits were reached. The bigger question now is where this leads. Is this the beginning of a full-blown breakdown in the Hamilton-Ferrari relationship? Or is it the spark that will ignite a renewed push to address the systemic issues within the Scuderia? Whatever the case, one thing is clear: the honeymoon is over. And in its place, a much more complex, much more human drama is beginning to unfold, one that could shape not just the rest of this season, but the legacy of one of Formula One's greatest ever drivers. It had nothing to do with rubber. That was merely the surface detail, the technical scapegoat thrown into the conversation to distract from the real, underlying issue that continues to fester within the walls of Maranello. This was never about tires. It was never about the compound choice, the degradation curves, or the track evolution metrics. This was about something far deeper, far more human, and far more corrosive to the heart of any racing team: trust, or more precisely, the unraveling of it. What unfolded wasn't simply another tactical misstep or a misread of race conditions. It was a moment soaked in meaning, rich with emotional subtext and charged with the weight of months, perhaps years, of frustration simmering beneath the surface. And for those attuned to the nuances of intra-team dynamics, it was the clearest yet of many red flags waving frantically from within the Ferrari garage. This wasn't the first instance, nor will it likely be the last, of Lewis Hamilton finding himself at odds with the voices in his ears. Voices that are meant to guide, support, and elevate, but too often sound hesitant, reactive, and disjointed. It was, however, a turning point in tone. You could hear it. You could feel it. There was a distinct shift, a kind of raw honesty that only surfaces when a line has been crossed internally. It was as though the seven-time world champion had reached a threshold, a silent contract broken in his mind. Every great driver builds a mental ledger, moments where belief is either reinforced or diminished. And during this latest race, that ledger took a heavy debit. Earlier in the season, we saw similar fractures. In Montreal, it wasn't Hamilton but Leclerc who bore the brunt of a strategic override that stripped him of a potential podium and left both fans and analysts bewildered at Ferrari's persistent inability to adapt on the fly. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a philosophical error, one rooted in a culture that appears more concerned with protocol than performance. Then came Miami, where Hamilton's radio traffic became a symphony of confusion and subtle rage, as he questioned the decisions being relayed with increasing disbelief. The messages from the pit wall were muddled, the timing was off, and the intent unclear. It painted a picture of a driver forced to operate in a fog, trying to extract clarity from a system that seems incapable of decisive action. But this latest episode was different in magnitude, not just in circumstance. This time, Hamilton didn't merely sound annoyed or doubtful. He sounded betrayed. This wasn't about a single strategy call gone wrong. It was about an accumulation of incidents that had finally reached critical mass. It was about a driver who no longer felt aligned with the machinery and minds surrounding him. And the most jarring part of it all? He didn't even try to hide it. There was no diplomatic walkback, no softening of words for the sake of internal harmony or media containment. Instead, there was candor, there was sharpness, and there was a call to arms. "I'm here to win," Hamilton said afterward, voice unwavering and devoid of the usual corporate filters. "We can't keep having these conversations mid-race." That line, simple on its face, was laden with implication. It wasn't just a plea for better communication, it was a damning critique of the very processes Ferrari leans on. In one breath, he questioned not just the decision-makers, but the very culture they represent. He made it abundantly clear that he didn't come to Ferrari to play politics, to be a passenger to indecision, or to fight his own team for the steering wheel of his career. He came to win, to add to his legacy, to become the architect of a red renaissance that has long eluded the Scuderia. And so, in those few sentences, Hamilton issued what could only be interpreted as a direct challenge. Not just to the engineers fumbling with data in real time. Not just to the strategists second-guessing their own instincts. But to the entire hierarchy, from the race engineers to the team principal to those hiding behind spreadsheets and simulations in Italy. It was a message unclouded by diplomacy: either rise to the level of a championship-winning operation, or prepare to be left behind by a driver who knows exactly what that standard looks like and will no longer settle for anything less. This was not an outburst in the heat of the moment. It was not the kind of emotional overflow you sometimes hear when adrenaline is high and context is missing. No, this was deliberate. It was broadcast. It was purposeful. It was the voice of a man who has tasted victory at the highest levels and now finds himself shackled by an organization that talks like a contender but moves like a committee. Hamilton wasn't venting. He was exposing a dysfunction. He wasn't angry because of a bad call. He was disillusioned by a pattern of behavior that suggests those calling the shots still don't understand what it truly means to operate at the apex of motorsport. This was about trust eroded slowly over time, degraded not by a single blowout but by the countless pinpricks of miscommunication, missed opportunities, and moments where instinct was sacrificed at the altar of caution. Hamilton is not the kind of driver who needs to be told what to feel. He operates on rhythm, momentum, and experience honed through over a decade of fighting for wins and championships. When that is repeatedly undermined, what remains is not just tactical error, it is a profound philosophical disconnect. And that, more than anything else, is what was laid bare during and after this race. To ignore this moment as just another chapter in Ferrari's long and colorful history of strategic missteps would be a mistake. It was more than that. It was a moment of truth. A flare sent into the night sky, visible to all who have been paying attention. A warning shot not just to Ferrari, but to the entire paddock: Lewis Hamilton is not here to play along. He is here to build something meaningful. And if Ferrari cannot match his urgency, his clarity, and his demand for excellence, then the story of this partnership may take a very different, very dramatic turn in the chapters ahead. The deeper this narrative unfolds, the more layers are peeled back, each one revealing not just a mechanical mismatch or a technical adjustment, but a complex, emotional, and psychological journey for one of the most accomplished drivers in the history of the sport. Lewis Hamilton's transition from Mercedes to Ferrari was never going to be seamless, not just because of the cultural shift or the immense legacy behind the prancing horse, but due to the intricate and deeply personal bond that every elite driver forms with their machinery. This isn't merely a tale of adapting to new engineers or learning a different set of team protocols. It's a raw, visceral challenge at the most fundamental level of driver-car interaction, one that strikes at the very foundation of how Hamilton operates behind the wheel. For over a decade, Hamilton was not just a driver at Mercedes. He was an integral part of the DNA that defined the car's behavior. The braking system, in particular, became an extension of his body, his instincts, and his racing mind. Every application of the brake pedal was a dialogue between man and machine, built on years of telemetry feedback, collaborative engineering, and a relentless pursuit of perfection. The brake-by-wire system in Mercedes was something Hamilton trusted implicitly. He knew precisely how the car would respond to his inputs, down to the millisecond and the millimeter. That relationship was forged through hundreds of race weekends, thousands of practice laps, and countless hours of simulator work. It gave him the ability to push beyond what seemed possible, to dance on the edge of grip with supreme confidence, to brake later than anyone else, and to rotate the car into corners with an almost artistic precision. Now, that certainty is gone. At Ferrari, Hamilton finds himself in unfamiliar territory, and the discomfort isn't abstract, it's painfully tangible. The braking system in the SF25, while sophisticated in its own right, delivers feedback that Hamilton describes as inconsistent, vague, and lacking the bite he's grown used to. There's a lag, a softness, a disconnection between what his foot commands and what the car delivers. And for someone like Hamilton, who builds his lap time around late braking and fluid corner entry, this disconnect is not a minor inconvenience. It's a fundamental flaw that undermines his entire approach. It chips away at the confidence that has long been his trademark. It forces him to second-guess the car's behavior in high-pressure moments, to brake earlier than he would like, to compromise lines he would normally attack with surgical aggression. To the average spectator, it might seem inconsequential. After all, a braking system is just one of hundreds of variables in an F1 car, and surely a driver of Hamilton's experience can adapt. But the reality is far more nuanced. At this level, where the difference between pole position and 10th place can be less than a tenth of a second, any hesitation, any lack of conviction, becomes brutally exposed. Hamilton has voiced his concerns multiple times, both internally within the team and subtly through public radio messages. He's pointed out how the car doesn't respond the way he expects it to under braking, how it unsettles just enough to ruin a corner entry, how the modulation of pressure doesn't yield the same progressive feedback he once mastered. These complaints aren't excuses. They're symptoms of a deeper systemic issue that has yet to be resolved. And while Ferrari's engineers are undoubtedly working to recalibrate the system to his liking, this is not a quick fix. It requires extensive remapping of brake balance, a reconfiguration of pedal feel, a refinement of the carbon-carbon disc performance, and even potential redesigns of the hydraulic characteristics. Every change in setup alters something else. Brake temperatures affect tire wear, brake bias changes impact weight distribution under deceleration, and even the regen mapping of a hybrid system plays a role. The process is painstaking and, more importantly, not guaranteed to yield the familiar sensation Hamilton seeks. As a result, Hamilton's performances have reflected this invisible struggle. In crucial qualifying sessions, where every corner demands absolute certainty, we've seen uncharacteristic mistakes, overruns into turn-ins, corrections mid-apex, hesitations on the throttle as he waits for the car to stabilize. These are not errors born of declining skill, but of mistrust in the very tool he's been given. And when a driver starts questioning their car, especially during the split-second decisions that define an F1 lap, the consequences are profound. Lap times suffer, race strategies unravel, and the psychological toll begins to mount. What makes this situation even more complex is the contrast with Charles Leclerc, who seems far more at ease with the Ferrari's braking characteristics. While not necessarily superior in raw talent, Leclerc's driving style, smoother, less reliant on heavy trail braking, appears to extract more from the current package. That comparison only heightens the scrutiny Hamilton faces. It's not just about adapting anymore, it's about keeping pace with a teammate who is inherently more comfortable in the machinery. Every race weekend becomes a test not just of speed, but of patience, resilience, and adaptability. And Hamilton, ever the competitor, is not taking this challenge lightly. He's throwing himself into the data, staying long hours with his engineers, spending even more time in the simulator, hunting for that elusive feeling of control he once took for granted. Yet as of now, the breakthroughs have been minimal, the gains incremental, and the frustration, though managed professionally, grows more palpable with each session. This isn't simply a matter of Hamilton needing to get used to the car. This is about undoing over a decade of muscle memory, rebuilding trust in a system that still feels foreign, and doing it all under the unrelenting spotlight of Formula One's most iconic team. It's about chasing perfection in an environment that rewards nothing less. And until that trust is rebuilt, until the car feels like a natural extension of his racing instincts again, the margins will continue to punish him, the apexes will remain elusive, and the brilliance that defined his Mercedes era will struggle to fully ignite in red. But make no mistake, this story is far from over. The issues plaguing Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari extend far beyond a simple matter of adaptation or early-season teething problems. They run deeper, reaching into the very DNA of the car, the philosophy of the team, and the dynamics between a seven-time world champion and a machine built with someone else in mind. The reality confronting Hamilton right now is not merely a technical inconvenience, it's a complete and disorienting misalignment of principles, preferences, and performance characteristics. The SF25, Ferrari's latest iteration of its relentless pursuit of championship glory, was not designed with Hamilton's nuanced, precision-based driving style at its core. It was engineered, fine-tuned, and sculpted over years of collaboration with Charles Leclerc, whose preferences have shaped the car's behavior at its fundamental level. The balance leans aggressively toward a front-end philosophy, sharp turn-in, a lively rear end, and a setup that rewards those who are willing to live on the edge of grip and push the car into oversteer territory. For Leclerc, it's a playground. He dances with the unpredictability, surgically threading the car through corners as though it were an extension of his nervous system. But for Hamilton, whose dominance has always come from finding perfect equilibrium between front and rear grip, extracting performance through seamless inputs and intuitive control, the car feels foreign, like wearing a tailored suit made for someone with a different posture and gait. Each lap becomes a negotiation with a machine that speaks a different language, responds to different cues, and demands different sacrifices. When Hamilton attempts to push through that discomfort, to impose his will on a platform that resists his natural instincts, the consequences are immediate and punishing. The tires begin to overheat in unpredictable ways, the rear end becomes progressively unstable, and the balance deteriorates to the point where confidence evaporates. The car begins to fall off the performance cliff earlier than anticipated, and by the time adjustments are made, the opportunity is gone. What was once a minor performance delta turns into a chasm of frustration. It's not just that the car isn't working for him, it's that it's actively working against him. Every tweak to the setup, every attempt to engineer his way into comfort, feels like patchwork over a much deeper incompatibility. And this technical disharmony is only one layer of the growing turmoil. Beneath the surface, a different kind of pressure is building, psychological, organizational, and philosophical. Ferrari's leadership is beginning to feel the weight of expectation not only from Hamilton himself, but from the legion of fans and stakeholders who believe that signing the most decorated driver in the sport's history would automatically propel the Scuderia into championship contention. But results have not followed. Strategic calls remain inconsistent. Internal processes seem rigid and slow to evolve. Meetings behind closed doors stretch longer. Tension simmers in whispered conversations in the hospitality unit, in lingering glances between engineers, in radio messages laced with ambiguity. Publicly, everyone says the right things. Privately, doubts are being voiced, perhaps not in anger, but in quiet resignation and concern. Hamilton, ever the professional, maintains a composed front. He's not one to throw his team under the bus. But those who have followed his career closely know the signs. The slight edge in his tone when he discusses car balance. The subtle frustrations masked in neutral PR language. The pointed praise for other teams' efficiency. These are the tells, indications that the harmony he seeks is slipping further away. For a driver of his caliber, used to machinery that bends to his will and a team that adapts to his needs with military precision, Ferrari's current structure feels static, almost ceremonial in its resistance to change. The feedback loop is slow. The upgrades are sporadic. The philosophy behind decisions seems rooted more in tradition than in ruthless optimization. It's not just a matter of adjusting to a new team, it's about asking whether that team is ready to adjust to him. Whether Ferrari can let go of decades of institutional inertia and evolve fast enough to meet the expectations of a driver who doesn't accept mediocrity in any form. This is no longer a conversation about rear-end grip or tire degradation, it's a reckoning with identity. Ferrari is being forced to confront what kind of team it wants to be. Does it remain an organization that celebrates heritage, passion, and emotional resonance above all else? Or does it take the necessary, sometimes painful steps toward becoming a modern, agile, and championship-caliber operation, one that is data-driven, relentlessly pragmatic, and willing to tear up old scripts in the pursuit of victory? Right now, the evidence suggests the transformation is incomplete. There are glimpses of evolution, yes, a more international technical staff, a willingness to engage in new methodologies, but the core remains traditional, almost romantic in its pursuit of success through intangible values. That works when things go well. But under pressure, those very same traditions can become shackles. Hamilton, meanwhile, operates with a different blueprint. His Formula One world has always been built on clarity, rapid iteration, accountability, and unity. The tension lies in the collision of these two worlds. And the result is a team at the precipice of internal division. Nobody wants to say it out loud, but the atmosphere within Maranello is no longer one of quiet confidence. It is one of strained optimism, where each race becomes a referendum not only on the competitiveness of the car, but on the integrity of the partnership itself. The engineers are stretched. The strategists are second-guessing. The communication is stilted, sometimes mistranslated. not in words, but in intent. What one side sees as a technical necessity, the other interprets as a philosophical betrayal. And in the middle of it all is a driver still searching for the trust, the fluidity, the understanding that once made him nearly unbeatable. Every Grand Prix now carries more than points, it carries consequences. Every decision made in qualifying, in strategy meetings, in post-race debriefs, is scrutinized not only for its effect on the weekend, but for what it reveals about the broader alignment, or misalignment, between team and driver. And as the season drags on, with results that fail to meet either side's expectations, the stakes grow heavier. This is not just about salvaging a campaign. This is about salvaging belief. In each other. In the vision. In the promise that bringing Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari was more than just a headline, it was a commitment to transformation. But that transformation, if it's to succeed, must be total. Half measures won't suffice. If Ferrari is unwilling to fundamentally reshape its processes, culture, and technical identity around a driver who has proven time and again that he knows how to build dynasties, then what's left is merely a high-profile mismatch with diminishing returns. And if Hamilton begins to suspect that the tools he needs to win are never going to materialize within the red walls of Maranello, then what follows may not be open conflict, but quiet withdrawal, strategic detachment, and eventually, the erosion of a partnership that was once imagined to be legendary. In Formula One, hope is not a strategy. And belief, while powerful, must be matched with execution. Right now, Ferrari has one of the greatest drivers in history in its garage, but the question that looms larger with every passing weekend is whether they know how to use him. Whether they're prepared to truly listen, adapt, and rebuild, not just the car but themselves. Because if they don't, the consequences won't just be missed podiums. They will be the slow unraveling of one of the most ambitious collaborations the sport has ever seen. If these critical concerns are not addressed with both speed and surgical precision, the fallout will extend far beyond the occasional disappointing race result or a handful of terse post-race interviews. What's truly at stake here is the potential derailment of an entire championship campaign, one that was supposed to represent a rebirth, a long-awaited renaissance for Ferrari, and a golden opportunity for Lewis Hamilton to etch a new chapter of greatness into his already illustrious career. But without immediate and effective intervention, this dream collaboration, this reunion of unparalleled talent and historic legacy, could spiral into dysfunction, disillusionment, and ultimately, a devastating waste of one of the most ambitious undertakings in modern Formula One. Hamilton didn't come to Maranello for mediocrity. He didn't sign on to become a ceremonial figurehead or a symbolic torchbearer of Ferrari's past glories. He came with the unrelenting expectation of performance, of excellence, of total commitment to perfection from every department of the Scuderia: engineering, strategy, pit wall, mechanics, aerodynamics, communications, leadership. He expects a machine of war, not a museum piece. This is a 7-time world champion, a titan of the sport who has raced with an almost pathological pursuit of supremacy for over a decade. He is not here to babysit organizational chaos or miscommunication or lack of cohesion. He demands sharpness. He demands results. And if those expectations are not met with consistent execution, his patience will wear thin, very thin. The time for promises and potential is over. The time for vague optimism and "we'll get them next week" mentalities has expired. The only thing that matters now is ruthless precision. Decisions must be instantaneous and correct. Pit stops must be flawless. Strategy must be proactive, not reactive. Reliability cannot be optional, it must be absolute. There is no room for the same operational hesitations that have plagued Ferrari for years. And Lewis knows this better than anyone. He's seen how weak links destroy title runs. He's felt the heartbreak of being let down not by talent, but by execution. And he will not suffer it again, not at this point in his career. He came here not just to drive, but to win, to dominate, to make history once more. Anything less, and this experiment will collapse into one more cautionary tale of what could have been. And make no mistake, the tension is already palpable across the paddock. Team principals whisper about it in hushed tones. Rival engineers study Ferrari's body language for signs of internal fractures. The fans, ever passionate and emotionally invested, can feel the undercurrent of strain. And the media? The media isn't waiting for the crisis. They are documenting its slow-motion evolution in real time. Every decision now is magnified 100-fold. Every radio transmission is replayed and analyzed for tone, implication, and hidden meanings. Every pit wall error is a headline. Every awkward interaction between Hamilton and his race engineer becomes a viral clip, a meme, a symbol of deeper dysfunction. This isn't merely about scoring a podium or salvaging a weekend. This is about whether Ferrari still has the internal fortitude, the unified vision, and the operational discipline to rise above its self-inflicted wounds. Because if they don't, if they fail to match Hamilton's level of commitment and precision, then they won't just be losing races. They'll be losing the one driver who could have rewritten the story of this generation for them. A driver who chose them when he didn't have to. A driver who walked away from the known quantity of Mercedes to risk it all for the mythos of the prancing horse. But myths don't win championships. Execution does. Unity does. Cold, ruthless, unrelenting excellence does. And unless Ferrari can rise to that level, immediately and without excuse, then this highly publicized alliance, once hailed as a fairy tale come true, will disintegrate into a public unraveling. And Lewis Hamilton? He won't look back. He'll walk away with the same unwavering resolve with which he arrived, leaving Ferrari not just with regret, but with the haunting realization that they let history slip through their fingers. So now the fire has been lit, and the questions echo louder than ever before across the paddock, through the garages, and behind every closed door at Maranello. Was Lewis Hamilton truly justified in openly voicing his doubts about Ferrari's strategy while the race was still unfolding, while the tires were still hot and the outcome still undecided? Was it the action of a seasoned veteran unwilling to repeat the failures of the past, or was it a moment of emotional detonation, triggered by frustration, miscommunication, or perhaps even a deeper disillusionment that has been growing race by race since he signed with the Scuderia? There are those who see it as a bold, necessary call to accountability, an unfiltered demand for clarity and performance in a team that has long promised excellence but delivered inconsistency. Others, however, argue that Hamilton's public criticism, delivered over team radio and heard around the world, could be the first fracture in what was supposed to be a glorious new era for Ferrari, one that paired the most decorated driver of his generation with the most legendary name in Formula One history. This isn't just about one race, one tire call, or one misjudged stint. This is about the growing chasm between expectation and execution. Hamilton did not come to Ferrari simply to extend his career. He came seeking redemption, legacy, and the ultimate challenge, to return the prancing horse to the top of the sport after more than a decade in the wilderness. But instead of finding a well-oiled machine, he has repeatedly found confusion on the pit wall, indecision during critical race moments, and a fundamental lack of cohesion that echoes the struggles of seasons past. And so when he questioned the strategy during the Grand Prix, when he pushed back against the decisions being made in real time, it wasn't just about that particular stint. It was a cry from a 7-time world champion who knows exactly what it takes to win and is beginning to fear that he may not find it within the walls of Ferrari. Is this public defiance a spark that will ignite real structural change within the team, forcing leadership to re-evaluate everything from communication flow to race operations? Or is it the start of a slow, painful disintegration of unity, the kind that quietly kills title hopes before the summer break even begins? Every great team in Formula One history has had its internal battles, but only the strongest survive them, and right now there's a growing sense that Ferrari is teetering on the edge. Charles Leclerc, once seen as the team's future, now finds himself shadowed by a legend who isn't content to wait for improvement. The engineers, caught between two drivers with very different communication styles and expectations, are under immense pressure. And Frédéric Vasseur, the team principal tasked with harmonizing this volatile blend of ambition, legacy, and raw speed, must now figure out how to prevent this bubbling tension from boiling over. Because this isn't just Hamilton versus a flawed race strategy. This could become Hamilton versus Ferrari's entire system. And the implications are vast. If Hamilton's words continue to strike chords with fans and pundits alike, if the world begins to see him as a truth-teller exposing the inner chaos of the red team, then public pressure will mount. The spotlight will become harsher. Every error, every misstep, every delayed pit stop and missed opportunity will be magnified. But if, on the other hand, the narrative shifts and Hamilton is painted as a disruptor unwilling to integrate, as a voice of discord rather than progress, then it is he who may find himself isolated, unable to steer the team in the direction he believes is necessary for success. And so the tension builds with each race weekend. Ferrari must now respond, not with press statements or platitudes, but with performance, consistency, and unity. They must prove, not just to the world but to themselves, that this dream partnership still has the power to deliver. Because if they can't, then what we're witnessing may not be the rise of a new chapter in the Ferrari saga, but but the slow, agonizing unraveling of a vision that was flawed from the beginning. The warning signs are there. The cracks are widening. And the question now isn't just whether they can fix it in time, but whether they ever truly had the blueprint for success in the first place. So where do you stand? Is Lewis Hamilton pushing Ferrari toward the future they desperately need, or is his intensity exposing the fact that this union may have always been destined for conflict rather than triumph? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you're the kind of fan who lives for every subtle clue, every pit wall whisper, every raw emotion caught in team radio, and every behind-the-scenes drama that never makes it into the post-race interviews, then make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Because trust us, this is just the beginning. The season may be long, but the real story is only just unfolding, and the most explosive chapters are still to come.